Did you know that the oldest surviving map of Africa wasn't made by a European? Maps are more than just lines on paper, they're tools of power, shaping trade, conquest, and even identity. Today, we'll journey through the captivating history of African maps, revealing how they have been used to create, control, and sometimes erase entire civilizations. Our story begins long before European explorers set foot on the continent's shores. We travel back in time to explore the cartographic traditions of Africa and its neighbors. Long before the age of European exploration, Africa was crisscrossed by elaborate trade routes connecting powerful empires. The Ghana Empire, flourishing from the 8th to the 11th centuries, controlled vast reserves of gold, fueling its dominance. This wealth attracted traders from across the Sahara, creating a network of routes vital to its survival. Following Ghana's decline came the Mali Empire, consolidating much of western Sudan in the 13th century. These empires needed maps, not necessarily in the way we think of them today, but detailed knowledge of routes, resources, and power centers. These maps existed in oral traditions, travelers' tales, and likely, in physical forms that haven't survived the ravages of time. A remarkable example of early mapmaking comes from an unexpected source, China. The De Ming Hun 2, created in 1389, is a stunning silk map stretching over 17 square meters. It depicts Africa with surprising accuracy, revealing that the continent was known to Asian cartographers long before the age of European exploration. Some believe it may even be a copy of a rock carving from decades earlier. This challenges the Eurocentric view that Africa was discovered by Europeans. The De Ming Hun 2 shows a sophisticated understanding of the world, demonstrating global awareness centuries ago. Arab merchants and sailors also played a vital role in mapping the coasts of Africa. They established trading posts along the eastern coastline, connecting Africa to the Indian Ocean trade network. These routes facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultural influences. Meanwhile, in the 14th century, European maps of Africa began to emerge. The Catalan Atlas, for example, offered a relatively respectful portrayal of African people compared to what would come later. But as the demand for resources and slaves grew, the tone of European cartography shifted. By the 1750s, maps were increasingly focused on exploitation. Rivers became extraction corridors, guiding the flow of goods, labor, and military expeditions inland. The horrific transatlantic slave trade fueled this shift, turning maps into tools of oppression. The interiors of these maps were often left blank, representing a deliberate erasure of African societies and their knowledge. This blank space justified the idea that Africa was unknown and therefore ripe for conquest. However, this was far from the truth. Powerful states, complex trade networks, and thriving urban centers already existed. The Songhai Empire, founded by Sunni Ali in the 15th century, became a major power in the western Sudan, controlling vital trade routes along the Niger River. These empires possessed extensive knowledge of their territories, knowledge that was often ignored or suppressed by European mapmakers. The 19th century brought even more dramatic changes. The development of quinine, which reduced the impact of malaria, allowed Europeans to penetrate deeper into the African interior. This opened the door for increased exploration and, ultimately, colonization. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 marked a turning point. European powers gathered in Berlin to carve up the African continent like a cake. Lines were drawn on maps with little regard for existing political boundaries, ethnic groups, or cultural landscapes. These lines became the foundation for colonial borders, dividing Africa in ways that continue to shape the continent today. The shift from route maps to boundary maps transformed African space into something Europeans could control on. paper before controlling it on the ground. This had devastating consequences for the African people, leading to displacement, conflict, and the erosion of traditional ways of life. The year 1960, often called the Year of Africa, witnessed a wave of independence movements. 17 African countries gained their freedom, marking a new chapter in the continent's history. Ghana became a republic, symbolizing the rise of a new generation of African leaders determined to shape their own destiny. However, the legacy of colonial borders remained. Many of the new African states inherited boundaries drawn by European powers, creating challenges for national unity and regional stability. The Sharpeville massacre in South Africa, also in 1960, highlighted the ongoing struggle against apartheid and the fight for racial equality. In the post-colonial era, African states have had to remap themselves politically, creating new flags, capitals, constitutions, and national identities. This process has been complex and challenging, but it represents a powerful assertion of self-determination. Today's African states still operate within borders whose origins are deeply tied to colonial partitioning. Modern infrastructure planning, resource politics, and conflict zones often follow older colonial logics in which roads, rail lines, rivers, and ports were designed for export rather than internal integration. Contemporary debates about decolonizing education and museums are directly tied to map history, because maps helped normalize colonial naming, boundary making, and spatial hierarchies. The continent's current map is shaped by the legacy of independence, when new flags, capitals, constitutions, and national identities had to be layered onto colonial border systems. The story of African maps is a story of power, knowledge, and control. It reveals how maps have been used to shape perceptions, justify conquest, and define identities. By understanding this history, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the complexities of modern Africa and the challenges it faces. Africa's story isn't just about lines on a map, it's about the people who have shaped the continent's destiny for millennia. It's a story that continues to unfold, with each new generation writing its own chapter on the map of Africa.